In this video, I'd like to talk about one of the newest features in Potterware 4.0, uploading an OBJ file. So I am first going to go to Object Settings, and instead of a Potterware object, I'm going to choose Import OBJ. And then I'm going to go to the Upload area and say Upload OBJ, and here I have a OBJ file that I'm going to bring in. Now, my main modeling program is Rhino, and it doesn't write meshes that Potterware always likes. So here's an example of something that I made in Rhino, and I made it intentionally as something that you couldn't make in Potterware, so it has a completely different shape on the bottom than it does on the top. And in Potterware, you're going to get the same cross-section profile all the way down. So I obviously have a big problem with this file. If you look at the toolpath, it's not at all just a single helix or spiral. So I am going to troubleshoot this file. First, I will go to Mesh Mixer, and Mesh Mixer is a free program that is available in Mac or PC, and I'm going to go ahead and import the OBJ file that I just showed you, which is in my downloads file. And I'm going to look at it. I don't actually see any errors in here. If I had errors, something would be lit up red. There might be some little red spikes sticking out of this. So in this event, all I'm going to do is resave it. So I'm going to choose to export, and we'll call this Loft Mesh Mixer. It's going to save it again in the OBJ format. And now when I go back to Potterware and I upload the new OBJ file that I made, Mesh Mixer, you will see that the file looks fine. I don't know what it is about Rhino versus Mesh Mixer that writes meshes that Potterware can understand, but it is a free program, and I do use it a lot to bring my Rhino geometry into Potterware. And once I have my own geometry in here, I can do a lot of things that we could do in geometry that we make in Potterware. So changing the object sides isn't really going to be anything that is going to help my model out too much here. I'll just see what will happen. Let's take it to 44 sides. I'm pretty sure it's going to change the shape, but not in a way that I like. So I never change the object sides once I'm in Potterware. I just leave it at the default, which is the highest number of sides. And that's going to give us the highest resolution model. You can see it's sort of simplifying it here. And perhaps it is of interest to some people, but I usually just leave it at the default. The object height, which defaults to 85 millimeter, isn't affecting my model. You can see that my height is 170 millimeters, which is the height of the original model that I made in Rhino. I am able to twist the object, and I'm also able to affect the layer height. So if I wanted to give my object a twist, I might go with a lower number. I can still deform the geometry, which is really neat. I don't know if I'll like the results or not. It's wild. Let's take it to something more subtle. It's very nice. And the object height is obviously, not 85, but if I wanted to scale the geometry, I could either by using uniform scaling, or I could use non-uniform scaling. It's just going to send itself back to its original size. So here I'll just scale on the Y. And I'm going to try to scale to a specific height. So let's say that I will scale to length, and I want it to be 50 millimeters high. So I'm going to go back and just reset all of these things. Let's just make this 1:1. Well, I'll go back to uniform scaling, and it'll just bring it back to its default. I want to show that I can add a base here. I can change the layer height. If I put in 2 layers for my base, which is what I always use, you'll see that it will fill the shape very nicely and work as a slicer in many regards, you know, same thing that you would get in Cura or Simplify 3D. You could put a base on your geometry. And then I can do all the horizontal effects and vertical effects that I can do with a Potterware model, and that's really cool. Let me just get these retracted a little bit. So let's say that I wanted to do a sine wave, and I'll give it some wave spacing so we can see it. Well, we'd be able to see it without wave spacing, but the actual sine wave pattern is going to be more visible if I give it some spacing. There you go. I've now, added a texture to the object that I brought in from Rhino. So all of the horizontal effects will work, all of the vertical effects. Really, the only thing that is not going to work would be the object height, unless you want to scale it to a specific height, and then you could make it 85 millimeters high if you wanted to. So this is super powerful. You're able to make a lot of really wonderful new kinds of forms in here because you can bring in your own geometry. But the downside is you do need to know how to model, and you do need to know another modeling tool. So I would say that Potterware to me is almost the gateway drug to 3D clay printing and 3D modeling, because it gives you the bug, it gives you a lot of bang for your buck, it gives you, a lot of flexibility and many variables. But if you want to control it even more, bringing in your own forms is really gratifying.